and Plan Commission for January 12th today, 2021. Jackie, could you please take roll call?
Michael Baker. Do not see Commissioner Baker here yet. Jesse Bank.
Here.
Todd Byrather.
Here.
Greg Francis.
Here.
Carol Shook.
Here.
Tim Williams.
Here.
Clifford Winger. Looks like Commissioner Winger is not here either. Mary Winkus.
Here.
Councilmember Kinnear.
Here.
Thank you. And we do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's first start out with public comment. Is there anyone from the public that would like to address the commission on a topic not on the agenda? Okay, hearing none. We'll go into the commission briefing session. Well, let's get the meeting minutes out of the way first. Can we hear a motion to approve the December 8th, 2021 meeting minutes, please?
Move to approve.
Thank you.
I second it.
Okay, we'll go Greg. Carol, thank you. Any discussion or edits? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? Abstentions? Okay, so approved. Before we jump into the city council report, I just want to, we were discussing in the leadership meeting, I see Mr. McClatchy and Ms. Morrison online. Related to our emails discussing Olympia legislative bills, would you like for us to recognize you on the agenda today? We just lose, Brian?
How about this? How about this?
Oh, there you are. You're.
However, it would be helpful. However, it would be helpful for you, Mr. President.
Okay. Is that your desire today, though? We'd welcome it.
Yeah, I'm here to answer whatever questions you might have about the legislation that you were focusing on. I know Councilmember Kinnear has an interest in the legislation as well. So if there are questions or you wanted me to summarize the legislation, I think that you've already sort of been discussing it. I guess I can relate from our lobbyists that Association of Washington Cities is deeply concerned about the bill's potential impact on local control. There are probably some significant guardrails around that and some time periods for cities to come into compliance. A number of cities have concerns. There's quite a bit of doubt about whether the bill is going to pass, certainly not in its current form, probably. I know Councilmember Kinnear had some potential tweaks that she wanted to see into the legislation. We don't know whether there will be a raft of amendments, I'm sure, about this legislation that tries to increase density near transit lines, high capacity transit lines, by allowing duplexes, triplexes, townhouses, etc. There's a 2-year period in which the city would have the opportunity to update its development regulations to carry out those legislative mandates. If the cities cannot get those development regulations in place within the 2 years, then there would be a model code which would be imposed on some cities of certain size. So that's sort of the long and the short of it. It's a governor request bill, so it will receive lots of consideration, lots of eyes, and a lot of attention. Councilmember Kinnear, do you have some additional info for the group?
You summarized it very well. They also know that I'll be meeting with Senate Majority Leader Bill, not to amend him, but to bring him up to speed on what the Plan Commission's role is for the city, what some of the things that we've already done. And then I will be working with you, with Eric Paulson, with our legislative team to see if there's some things that we can agree on going forward that would be tailored specifically to Spokane. So, but you covered it really well. Thank you.
One other aspect in talking about the stakeholders that might arise is that some of the affordable housing development community is not necessarily in favor of the bill right now because it does not provide for affordability requirements. It is simply silent on the issue. So that the radius from transit, maybe some transition issues. There could be many amendments offered in good faith to try to improve the bill as it moves through the process. Happy to continue to come back to the group to keep you up to date. It sounds like this is a huge priority for this group, and anything we can do to help this group obtain its objectives is what we're here to do. So, Mr. President, do you have any? Open the floor. Any questions, thoughts, comments, requests?
No, thank you. And that's
Oh, that's a good question. Sorry, what is the bill number? I just saw something in the chat. 56 something. I don't have the bill numbers in my head yet. Sorry.
5670.
the Senate bill is 5670 and the
That's
House
right.
bill is 1782,
That's right.
I believe. Yeah.
1728, something
I
like
think
that.
82. Am I wrong on that? There we go, Trail. Thank you.
Right.
So it's in the chat. Okay, no, thank you, Brian. I just wanted to sneak that in the briefing session. If the commission wanted to discuss it more, it's not on our agenda. It's something we'd have to suspend the agenda and put it if we wanted any discussion today, and we could insert it at, potentially the end. But I wanted to recognize Brian, you and Melissa for joining us. Thank you, and giving that kind of legislative update, even though we don't have it on our briefing session. We can park that for now and continue moving through the briefing session, or if the commission, and then talk about it before the workshop, if that's the desire of the commission to talk more about this. And I don't know if there's a formal ask that we take a position or discuss this, but it was raised this week that whether we wanted to take the opportunity to. Okay. We'll ask again at the end of the briefing session, but thank you very much, Brian and Melissa. Okay.
Yeah, at this, I believe the bill is scheduled for a hearing.
It is scheduled for a hearing on the 18th, I believe, right? House side. Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, City Council report, Councilmember Kinnear.
Thank you. Happy New Year, everyone, first of all. Hope you had a safe holiday and glad to be back. I'll give you a little update on what council has passed thus far regarding ARPA. We did pass the ARPA categories totaling 14 million, and that was this Monday. And the categories are housing, so 6 million for affordable housing, the arts, and childcare. Now, those are the categories, and we've already approved funding for development incentives. So the next steps will be approving RFPs for specific projects. So the different entities, nonprofits and for-profit entities will be submitting their RFPs to council for approval. Last night, 2 nights ago, sorry, this is Wednesday, we approved an ordinance requiring landlords to not evict tenants waiting for rental assistance dollars. And this was a very narrow scope and important for almost 2,000 households that are waiting for money. It was very controversial, as you can imagine. Landlords are not in favor of it. I think I received over 150 emails in favor of this ordinance, and it did pass 5-2. Jacoby and I are working on transition zones, as I mentioned, around CC areas, and continuing to craft ordinances around development incentives. The next development incentive that will be presented to committee will be projects of citywide significance. And some of you may remember that we did this maybe 4 years ago, and it was very popular with developers. We're going to ask for $2 million to be put up in that pot so that developers can apply. And some of the folks who are waiting for this are large multifamily projects. So I think it's important that we proceed with some haste so we can get some of these things off the ground, because housing is a priority right now. And we'll continue to work, as I said, with our legislative team on the bill that's before the House and the Senate. So I welcome any questions if you have them. Okay. Well, this is a sleepy group, so thank you all. And if you have questions later, you feel free to email me.
It's a quiet group today. I don't think I heard you mention anything, Councilmember. Is the council, have they received the action we took on before the New Year's on the comp plan amendment? Regarding LU 1.3 and 1.4?
Yeah.
We were going to tie that to when the council receives the recommendation from the comp plan subcommittee.
Yes.
Got it.
Thank you, Louis.
So that subcommittee will make recommendations, and then the commission recommendation will be packaged with those that come out of that and reviewed by council. That subcommittee meets in February, beginning of February. And I think the members should have all received notice of that from council office.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if no other questions, Mary with the Community Assembly Liaison Report, please.
I have nothing to report. I have given the Community Assembly my report, and I received only one question about it, and I am busy trying to get a hold of somebody to answer that, but nothing else to report.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Okay, President report. I'll leave the news, regarding our membership to Louis to announce. Regarding this, anything in Olympia, I welcome if the commission does, any updates during the session. It's going to be a very quick session, so we're only going to meet a couple times, but if there are any items that would like to be raised to the commission, we're happy to hear them and appreciate any updates there are as we go through. I think in a question, a bill like this that's going to be considered very quickly in committee and may go somewhere, may not. But I'd like to understand better what role we could or should play. I mean, obviously advise the council. I think this question came up on Monday about this one. If AWC is opposed, if the city council is potentially opposed, but we have a different recommendation, what's the voice for that? Should there be? Maybe not. Can we testify individually, as individuals? Is there any precedent for testifying as a commission? I assume no, but I'd like to hear some feedback from that. Maybe not now, but anytime. I've been, in coordination with Seattle Planning Commission on their intents, and so they're also reviewing this and understanding what their bounds are in a different structure. So, don't want to be secretive about any of that. It was simply it's been a few emails going back and forth the last couple of days about whether or not we have a position on it, since it's the topic we've been discussing now for 2 years and definitely over the last year. So, okay, with that. I think that's it. I can pass it to Cliff, please, for the Transportation Subcommittee report. Oh, Cliff's not here.
There wasn't a meeting in January of the PCS.
I'm vice chair. I could report.
Oh, there you go.
That'll work.
Please, Mary.
Yeah, well, we didn't meet in January, so that would be the report. But if Cliff's not there, you can always call on me.
Thank you. for that. Louis, did you have anything to add, or as we roll into the secretary report? Okay.
So I can confirm that. They will have a meeting in February, but there was none in January.
Okay. And I did see that obviously Councilmember Kinnear has been reappointed to the Plan Commission, and then was the council member Bingle going to the subcommittee? I remember that. So
Yeah, we'll confirm that. I actually haven't looked at it myself. So Lori, do you know? Council member?
I thought she had
That's correct.
indicated it was Councilmember Zappone. Bingle?
We'll get back to you on that.
okay. Okay.
Sorry,
I have a
I'm getting
question.
pulled in 5 different directions. The subcommittee, we're talking about the docketing committee,
The transportation subcommittee.
transportation. I do not know. We have 58, I did not mention, but we have 58 committees and subcommittees we're on, so I do not know. I did not memorize
Oh.
everybody's, so I do not know. It
Sorry.
might be Michael Cathcart again.
The transportation subcommittee was Councilmember Bingle.
Okay.
I was thinking the alternate to Plan Commission.
No,
Excuse
the
me, can
alternate to plan commission will be Zach Sapone.
I have a question.
Please.
Yeah, last year, we kind of made the exception because usually, at least the way the rules are written, the same person who is on the Plan Commission is also on the Transportation Subcommittee. If it's going to split apart again, probably ought to look at revising the rules or getting back into compliance.
And so I'm on 11 boards and commissions right now. So I'm not going to assume another one. We may want to change the rules. And I would leave that up to James to tell us what the procedure would be.
Okay, because we kind of lifted it for 1 year, so.
And when you say we, I mean, the council ultimately makes that decision, not the
Right.
planning commission.
But we read the rules and we said they were going to be, I can't remember what word we used, but we didn't follow them last year. So we probably ought to fix them if that's gonna.
Yeah, and let's maybe James can weigh in on that because I know people think I'm a lawyer, but I'm not. So maybe James can weigh in on that.
Yeah, if we're talking about the Plan Commission rules of procedure or similar rules, I think those can be amended at any meeting. I think it would be good to maybe work up a proposed amendment ahead of time and put it in the agenda so people have a chance to look at it ahead of time. But I think that can be done anytime.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
honestly, if I might, I don't think it's a bad idea to have one person on Plan Commission, one person on the Transportation Subcommittee, because it provides more coverage for planning projects and planning issues and brings more council members up to speed. So I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing.
I have one other question then. Should the subcommittee prepare a draft or should that go to the full commission to prepare a draft?
So Mary, I think it's an important, valid point, and sounds like it's the will of the council, and we can confirm that. And if so, I think it is appropriate then to have the transportation subcommittee propose the new rules, because I think in my memory is that's where it is, right? It's not in the Plan Commission rules; it's in the subcommittee
Correct.
rules.
So I'll talk to Cliff then if that's Commissioner Kinnear's will, and we will get going on a change so we may be able to talk about it in February.
That works for me.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Well.
All right, thank you, Mary. Okay, Louis, back to you.
Let's see here. We had Commissioner Joanne Wright resign from the Plan Commission just because she took on a new role at Washington State Department of Commerce in kind of planning and growth management related items, and felt like that at times may have a conflict, and her workload was expected to increase, so she bowed out. And I already appreciated her for her time, and Plan Commission leadership did also. So that leaves currently 3 vacant positions. The Plan Commission subcommittee that interviewed the 3 applicants that were had, those recommendations have then gone on to the mayor's office, and we're expecting some recommendations coming forward to council here within a month or so on that. So hopefully we'll have a couple positions filled. We've left the advertisement open for additional applicants. So if through all of your social networks, if you have anybody you would like to saddle with this responsibility, please recommend that they apply. The form is on Boards and Commissions website. They can just Google that for application and or get a hold of me and we can forward it to them also. We have a couple of our old timers that have been reappointed. So Mr. Francis and Ms. Shook have been reappointed to the Plan Commission for another full term, and I think the website's been updated to reflect that. So we appreciate their ongoing efforts. The planning staff is helping to initiate a small update to the MFTE boundary map currently. There's an area being looked at around in Garland and U District. After this minor map update that's been requested by council, there will be a lengthier process to review all the program. And at that time, likely be in a few months, we'll ask for a couple Plan Commission volunteers to sit on that if they so desire, to be a part of that program update, the multifamily tax exemption program. We do have the comp plan subcommittee. We'll be reviewing that, and I think we have the commissioners selected and have been notified. I believe their first meeting is February 1st, and they'll make a recommendation to the full council on which annual comp plan amendment, in this case, I think they're all private at this point, are going to be moving forward. And let's see, we have hired 2 new staff members. One will be starting later this month, and we'll introduce them at that time, and then we'll have another starting in February. So we are starting to be able to backfill some of our vacant positions, so we're excited about that. I think that covers everything I have at this point.
Okay, any questions? Go ahead, Greg.
Lewis, can you speak to the planning director process at all?
I believe there is, if things have gone well, there will be an announcement here either this week or next week. And then that recommendation, assuming that's moving forward, and I don't know the details of that, will be going to the city council for confirmation. I believe the anticipated start time would probably be early February or so before we would have a permanent director in position if everything has gone well. But like I said, I'm not privy to the past couple of weeks inner workings on that process.
Thanks.
Okay. If nothing else, thank you, everyone. We can move into the first workshop item, which is Division Connects. Mr. Lean, please.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a few slides to share, so let me get that started. Okay, can you see that okay?
We can, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so my name is Jason Lean with Spokane Regional Transportation Council, and I last spoke before this group with Carl Otterstrom last March about the Division Connect study. At the time, we gave information about the alternatives analysis and preferred alternative that was being identified for bus rapid transit along Division. And so today I'll give you an update about where we're at with the study and focus a bit on a couple of areas we're focusing on as the study is actually just in this last few months. It's been a long process, but we're seeing the finish line here in the last few months, and I'll let you know how the study is progressing and where we're at. So a couple things just to know how this study is set up. So the project management is shared between my agency, SRTC, and Spokane Transit. We have a consultant team that is assisting with with the technical work, and that team is led by Parametrics. We coordinate with our agency partners at WashDOT, City of Spokane, and Spokane County. And the method that we use for that coordination, some things that we do routinely is we have weekly check-in meetings where City of Spokane and other agency planning staff sit in on those meetings. We also have monthly agency meetings where it's a bigger team of agency staff and workshops. We also have a steering committee, which is made up of a subset of both the STA and SRTC boards that helps provide high-level guidance to the study process. And here's the makeup of that steering committee, 6 members. As I said, some are either on the SDA or SRTC board or both. We last met in mid-December, so we meet, every 2 to 3 months over the last couple of years. And the study origin, it launched at the beginning of 2020. It's a transportation study of the Division Street corridor. One of the primary focus points was implementation of bus rapid transit along Division, connecting from downtown Spokane up to past the North Division Y. We also took a more holistic look at the corridor from the perspective of all transportation modes, not just transit. Also trying to understand how the future completion of the North Spokane corridor, what impact that has on Division Street and travel demand on Division. And then also with considering development of high performance transit system along Division, what type of land use opportunities are there? And I'm going to talk a bit more about that today, which is one of our focus points in this last phase of the study. So that first phase was really looking at the bus rapid transit mostly, and also multimodal transportation. The second phase is looking at land use and also more specifically active transportation connecting across into the Division Street corridor. So that first phase wrapped up last spring, included identification of a locally preferred alternative for bus rapid transit. That preferred alternative was accepted through actions by both the SDA and SRTC boards back in spring 21. Just as a reminder, the locally preferred alternative is described here in a table, which probably isn't as interesting as the next graphic, which shows the concept, but this just gives information about the service level, termini alignment, and lane configuration. And the concept is illustrated here. So in the main line of Division, which is really past the couplet to the North Division Y, the bus is operating in what are known as business access and transit lanes on the outside or curbside. Those are for business or bus through travel and also ingress and egress to properties and driveways and intersections. Couplet is the same configuration with that business access and transit lane on the outside, keeps that one-way configuration. And then it also includes on the Ruby side of the couplet a protected bike facility. And so all of these elements, this concept will be looked at much more closely in a preliminary design effort that STA is kicking off now. So start to answer all those questions about functionality at intersections, how this bike facility fits into Ruby, and all those kind of different operational and safety questions will be explored in detail. So, which brings us to the second and final phase of the study, which kicked off last summer. And the scope of work focuses on 3 areas, and I alluded to them already. It's a land use planning with focus on activity nodes along Division. So where there are proposed station locations, what are some opportunity areas that could see perhaps intensification of land use? The transportation planning side of things is focused on active transportation. So connecting people to those station areas, and also in other parts of the corridor where there aren't say, for example, specific bike facilities along the main line of division, but where are there parallel routes that can help support that type of travel? And then public engagement to inform those two bullets I just mentioned. On the land use planning side of things, the activity nodes are areas along around station areas that could see some potential for change. So that's what we're trying to evaluate, is what are some of those potentials and opportunities, and what are perhaps some of the barriers at these different areas along division. And that discussion has been filtered through workshops with our agency partners, and also through a public engagement tool that we had active last month or last couple months. We're also, making sure that we're coordinating with the transit-oriented development framework plan. And I'm sure you've all heard reports about that. Jason Graff at Center-Based Planning, and the work that his firm is doing, looking at the areas around the city line and where there are some opportunities and perhaps some policies that could be put into place. So we're paying close attention to what's coming out of that study to see what can be applicable to division as well. The active transportation side of things, we have taken a large array of potential projects that improve bike and pedestrian mobility and access to transit around Division Street. We've taken projects from the City of Spokane and Spokane County plans, also taken that further to look at where there's gaps and possible safety concerns. And then through the screening process, and also through workshops with the agency staff partners in a public engagement tool that we also had released and going through the end of last month, to help inform a certain number of projects that the study is going to recommend moving forward for. Essentially, the study will take a smaller number of this large array of projects and do some preliminary design and come up with some cost estimates and recommendations. And what we've done in public engagement is we've had two online tools that were active through the end of last month. One was a story map that talked about the land use nodes with a questionnaire to ask folks about their thoughts on the land use nodes along division. And then we also had an active transportation map, which showed a number of different projects and then asked for feedback on those from the community. That third bullet there is not really directly related to the other two, but it's just another activity that we're currently doing as a study group. And that is talking to developers and property management stakeholders, just to hear what their thoughts are about the potential for division as it potentially changes in the future with the implementation of bus rapid transit, and how those that type of investment can change the market for different types of land uses along division. So we're having that conversation to hear what their perspectives are in terms of how they see those opportunities. And that's ongoing right now. We've just had a few so far, but that's just another way to kind of tap into that knowledge base and what their thoughts are. So next couple of slides, I'm just going to share responses from that land use questionnaire I mentioned. So along division, we had circled or identified 11 different nodes at station areas. And the first question just asked people who responded, and we ended up with 237 responses, people who responded to the questionnaire. And the first one had to do with, of the nodes that are shown on the map that we provided, where would you like to see land use change over time? And so of the respondents, the number one selection was Northtown, like Northtown Mall area. And all of them are really there and south of that, more in the inner southern portion of the Division Street corridor, around Foothills, Empire Garland intersection, and then Ruby North Bank at the southern end, just on the north side of the river. And then farther north, we had interest based on the responses in the Francis Lyons intersection and right at the Y. These are areas that the community, or at least the people who responded, were interested in seeing land use change over time. And this next graphic just kind of shows how these were loosely illustrated with that first selection around Northtown, the second highest selection at Foothills, and then Empire Garland, followed by Ruby North Bank. And then those two northern ones I don't have graphically shown, but those are at those major intersections listed there at Francis and at the Y. Another question that we asked in the survey was what type of land use change are imagining at these activity node locations. And so the respondents pretty overwhelmingly in this case chose that the first one, they're allowed to pick up to 3 or 4 of this list that was shown here. So a lot of the respondents indicated more walkable and pedestrian friendly. The second one, I realized the text is cut off there on the left, so I'll just kind of read what those are. More trees and landscaping, that's that yellow bar. Blue is a greater mix of land uses. The coral color is accessible by bike or scooter. The brown is convenient access to BRT stations. And then the rest, I believe, are readable. Red is more compact development. Orange is easier to drive to. So yeah, so this is consistent with, I think, an earlier initial questionnaire that we did early on in the process, just to ask what types of things or changes would you like to see in division. And there was a lot of indication that, recognizing its function as a state highway, but also recognizing that it's not that comfortable of an environment to walk in. So if you're thinking about the future of a bus rapid transit system and its successful implementation, obviously you have to be able to comfortably walk to and from those stations. And for the respondents, this is the zip code, most prominent zip codes of the residents that responded to the survey, with 99205 being the most common. Okay, so switching gears from the land use nodes, what we've had the consultant team also do is look at what types of actions have occurred in other BRT corridors around the country. So there's a couple of documents that were produced by the consultant team. One is findings from other BRT corridors and systems. And then also there was a review of existing plans and policies for specifically how those apply to land use planning and BRT development on Division. Both of those documents are under the Learn More tab at divisionconnects.org. The consultant team also did some interviews with other corridor operators around the country, and they focused on 4 different communities that they actually had phone interviews with. One is MX in Eugene, the Vine is a BRT line in Vancouver, Washington, East Busway in Pittsburgh, and then the Health Line is a BRT line in Cleveland, Ohio. And so the report out on that is in that document that I mentioned on the previous slide. And just generally speaking, the types of things that they asked about and were interested in is, and actually found, I guess, based on these BRT systems that have been in place for some time, they have noted that at major station areas, development intensity increases, job concentration. Also, when these BRT systems that have been implemented, they've all tended to expand over time too. So their initial line and termini wasn't one and done. It's like beyond that, other BRT systems or additional extensions of those systems occurred since their initial implementation. Also looked at transit-oriented development, what influences that, and the outcomes based on policy and other public actions and public investment that helped influence that. And that's indicated in that how that can leverage private investment in those areas. And then also another just general finding, and this is in a meta study of BRT systems around the country, that around the major station areas that within, a certain buffer, property value increase has been noted. And, saying that, there's, it actually came up in one of our discussions, agency discussions last week, and also noting that the potential for making sure that existing residents are accommodated and there isn't a kind of a negative effect in the sense that if property values increase to the sense that people are pushed out. So I think there's ways to look at how housing affordability can also be preserved when these systems are put into place. So the next few slides, I'm just going to talk about the individual land use nodes briefly. And with what the consultant team and the team as a whole looked at is where there's a potential opportunity, where there's potential barriers, and then what are the different types and scale of change that could occur along division, recognizing that it's a long corridor, it's 8.5 miles. That's something that occurs in the southern end could be remarkably different than something that could occur in more in the northern end or in the Spokane County area. So let me preface this by saying what the study will be doing is taking each of these land use nodes that are shown here and creating what I'll call cut sheets. So it'll be information about each node, what some of its opportunities are, what are its assets, and then what are some of barriers, if any, that are at each of these locations. And then the intent is to really set up the city and or county to do future, more detailed planning work in these areas and see this as really, more of a beginning than an end to some of those additional land use planning processes. So having said that, what's shown here on the map are the node location, and the boundary itself is kind of loose, so don't take that too literally. But then the map also displays areas where the land value is greater, equal or greater to 2 times the improvement value. So it just gives some indication where there's large or tracts of land where the improvement value is quite a bit lower compared to the land value. And so that indicates some redevelopment potential. So this is moving from north to south, the 2 termini nodes in the Spokane County area. Moving from that, there's a potential node around Whitworth, and then the Y. The Y, of course, is kind of complicated, having two major facilities, street facilities, intersecting that way. But nonetheless, there is some opportunity there around that station location. And then moving south from that, around Lincoln, and then Francis and Lyons. Of course, Francis going forward and now being a critical connection to the North Spokane corridor, and also being a state highway facility, major intersection with division. And then moving south from that, the Rowan area, really is around Franklin Park, and then you think of Holy Family Hospital, so there's like a lot of medical employment in that area. Northtown Mall, you think about what's the long-term prospects for the regional mall, and then Empire Garland with B.A. Clark Park, and then really serves as a gateway to the Garland district to the west. And then the final 2 here, the foothills in the northern part of the Ruby Division couplet, and then that area in the south called Ruby North Bank, which is has a lot going on, close to downtown, close to the river, close to Gonzaga, and all the activity in the North Bank. So that one is pretty interesting, and I think has changes that are occurring now, but the long-term prospects there are interesting as well. So in terms of schedule, and I really covered those 3 rows above, like we're right in the middle of all this work. So what the outcomes will be for transportation planning is identification of potential projects with preliminary design information that will be passed on to the city and county for consideration for their capital improvement programs. Land use planning will be, further analysis and description of each of those nodes that I described on the previous slides. And then the public engagement is kind of an ongoing informing the public what's going on, but our major feedback elements have been completed at the end of last month. So we're going to take that information and help inform the transportation planning, the land use planning. And this will all culminate in that last green row, which is a final report, documentation of the findings from public engagement, land use, and transportation planning. And those final recommendations will be wrapped up in this coming spring. And then the last couple slides here, just next steps moving forward. Those development interviews I mentioned, we'll continue with those through the rest of this month. We have a February workshop scheduled for February 3rd to talk about potential active transportation projects. And workshop will be with agency staff at WashDOT, the city and county, and also SDA. And one thing I didn't mention, but we will have a travel demand modeling exercise. So it's something we did in the first phase of the study to look at the different BRT alternatives, but we're going to take that model and do a couple more runs with some different scenarios. So we're going to think about turning the dials a bit on land use. So if that changes and there's some more intensification in some of the nodes along division, what impact does that have on travel demand on division? And we're going to run those scenarios and just see how that affects operations and also ridership on the bus. And then the big heavy lift is really development of an implementation of bus rapid transit. STA is leading that charge. They have selected a consultant team, which is actually Parametrics also, to continue that work for planning and design of that system. And then next time we'll have a steering committee meeting. It's loosely described as February, March, where we'll meet with that group again to talk about really probably our final meeting of the steering committee before the study wraps up. So yeah, thanks for bearing with me, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Go ahead, Jason. Just if you see people, go ahead and recognize them if you don't mind.
Hi,
see
Jason,
Councilmember
this is
Gator.
Lori. I have a question.
Yeah.
So the very first, I'm not going to ask you to go back to those slides, but one of the very first slides you had was an elevation of what the lanes look like. So you had the transit lane, you had bike lanes and trees and so forth. And so I'm assuming that there will be a reduction of lanes for automobiles. Is that true?
Based on that concept, yes.
Okay. So my question is, have you had any pushback from business associations or private business owners about what some of them are calling a road diet? And we're not calling it a road diet, we're calling it right sizing. So have you had any pushback from any of those folks?
I would say we've had some comments like that. I can't say there's been, it's been common to hear that. So one of the things that the study did was model how division functions with the North Spokane corridor connected to I-90. And so what the modeling indicated, once that facility is open and can accommodate, higher speeds and, less delay, that vehicles are attracted to that facility from division and other north-south corridors, including Hamilton, Nevada, et cetera. So yeah, the interesting impact is that volumes actually in the model are reduced on division with the NSC in place. And so yeah, it's an interesting discussion because I think some of it even if you did nothing on division, I think there's some business models that don't like the idea that there'll be less vehicles driving by. And I think, you know, some businesses that may be the case. I think others that it might be debatable that that's the mark of success, is whether there's a high ADT. So I think as you know, we've tried, I guess, to have, you know, a pretty broad-based reach to communicate what the different alternatives are. We've talked to, you know, different landowners along Division about this alternative that was shown, to get their thoughts and, you know, create some awareness out there. You know, I suspect that as STA continues to work on this process, and, you know, more and more interaction with people, that, you know, that discussion could come up again. But, you know, part of the recipe, I think, for success on Division is seeing how that north-south capacity added by the NSC helps facilitate change on Division. So it's kind of a balance there.
Thank you.
Jesse?
Yeah.
So quick question on the land use stuff that you touched on a little bit there. I think, first of all, congratulations and thank you so much for bringing in that land use component on a transportation project like this, because it is really important, particularly on such a key corridor. What I'm curious about is, once you've completed your final plan and there's some sort of approval, you've gotten to the end of that rubric that you showed us, how do you see any sort of land use based conversation or changes or tweaks or anything like that occurring? Is there an interface back and forth with the planning department? Are there going to be recommendations to this body to potentially consider different land use classifications in those nodes you've identified? How does all of that kind of meet us, if you will?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think that I see Lewis put on his camera. So what I think what this study process is doing is looking at things at a high level, with the expectation that the additional detail work will be passed on to the respective jurisdictions that have land use authority, obviously the city of Spokane and Spokane County. So I think when we are planning what these deliverables are, we're having ongoing conversations with city planning staff to see that, okay, is this the information you need? What's useful for you to kind of carry the torch into the next steps? So yeah, I think the study process and myself, I guess, as the project manager from SRTC, have been very mindful about that. This doesn't just kind of end and then nothing happens. I'm hoping that we're generating added value and some momentum that then can be carried on by the land use jurisdictions. You want to add something, Lewis?
Yeah, Jason, have you heard, we put in, or STA did, and we're a partner with Spokane County on a federal grant to take this to the next level. And I think we're supposed to hear about that in the first quarter of this year if we're awarded that. And that's close to $700,000. So that's kind of the magnitude of what we're looking at to be able to drive this home. If not, we will be going around twisting arms and holding out our hat to look for resources like our other projects. So.
Well, thank you both for that color. Again, it's I've seen too many major transportation corridor plans talk just about inside of their silo and the transportation corridor planning itself, and not sort of zoom out and look at some of the uses around there. So I found that really refreshing, and I'm excited to hear more and potentially deliberate on some things that can help capture some of that intensity and the additional people move through the corridor. So thank you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Jason, this might be a question for Lewis as well as yourself, but my understanding is right now Division is not a center and corridor. So some of the development incentives that would apply to other major arterials is not applied to Division. And so I was wondering, is the fact that it's not a center and corridor limiting the more housing along the Division Street corridor? And if it is, when would the Plan Commission have an opportunity to address that?
There are actually a couple centers that are along Division corridor within the city of Spokane. Northtown is identified and Holy Family area. Some of those do have some of the incentives we've had in the past and will be looked at again in the future. And the greater downtown area has quite a bit of the incentive package closer to kind of the Gonzaga south of Sharp area. And so as a part of this future planning for this area, that'd be to look at how can we better make better urban environments on these node locations. Some of them may not be directly focused right on Division, maybe off to one side. That's been quite the discussion, is how can you really make Division that livable? It may be the spot to pick up the transit, but do you really want to have or try to make place right on Division? Can you do that on the back street? So that's all part of the future phases. We have had neighborhood or center planning processes, like I said, for Holy Family. It's been a few years now that did look at some of those place making, how to create a place, avenues, and we've had some zone changes related to that. Land use and zoning changes to help implement it around Holy Family.
I have a question.
Good, Carol.
Hi, this is Carol. Thank you. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions in regards to the rapid transit. Can you tell me how many stops there would be and from one end to the other?
Yes, although I feel like I'm hazarding a guess if I were to tell you. If I look back at the map, see, there's approximately maybe a dozen station pairs.
Okay. And to get from one end to the other, how long approximately would that take?
Oh, well, I do know that if you look at so if you look at travel volumes, I know a vehicle takes roughly 23 minutes from downtown to get to the really northern portion of the corridor. The bus itself has some dwell time, although Bus Rapid Transit does its best to reduce that dwell time at stations. So, but I think you can assume with stops, the bus would take a little bit longer than that. So maybe the 25 minute range plus, something like that.
Okay.
And that's for a like entire trip from the very north end to downtown.
Mm-hmm. Would there also are there any day-long parking areas where people can park their cars on one end of town and travel all the way to the other end if they're working downtown, live on the north end?
Yeah, you talking about a park and ride?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, there's a Hastings park and ride right now. So if you're riding Division Bus 25, today you can park at Hastings Park and Ride, and so yeah, I think the future BRT terminus will include some type of transit center or park and ride opportunity. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Jason, thank you. We always appreciate your your commitment to sharing with us. I have a couple of questions. So last year, I had asked about the BRT decision by the board. I understood that was a good answer. Carl gave, I think a lot of it, right, on just funding and so forth and why. But, and then so the board made that last spring. So it seems locked right now. But my question is when can designers participate? And Louis, maybe that's what you mean by raising it to the next level. There's the land use piece. For some of the questions like trees and things like that, that's actually urban design, right? Not necessarily planning. And I've always been curious in this process, who gets to defend the right of way? It seems like the authority for that lies within, these boards of STA and SRTC, which include the city and the county and so forth, right? But, it's like, when you look at those sections, who gets to propose that we want to raise the bar on, green tramways and things like that, as opposed to a BRT, I did a quick calculation just for fun. You know, from the river to the Y, it's 6 miles. And so that's 32,000 feet. And if you take 32,000 feet times 24 feet, which is two 12-foot bus lanes, that's 762,000 square feet, which is 17.5 acres of pavement, north-south facing, right? That we're committing to our, you know, our built environment, right? And you could argue it's already there and fine, so forth, right? But it's like, who's defending that kind of, you know, experience? Because I think, well, I don't think it's just an opinion, my opinion. And, you know, obviously division is an awful urban experience right now. So anyway, maybe there's not an answer to that. I just am curious when those discussions are happening and when the designers get to participate.
Yeah, it would be expected that it'd be another phase. We would take and start drilling down on each one of these segments along with the nodes and bringing in, you know, a wide swath of different professions and experience to be able to help frame that long-term, develop actual projects that could then seek funding to go to implementation. So,
you know, one last example, and I'll, you know, kind of step down here is, you know, the decision seems to be made to put the bus on the curb, or, you know, as a turn lane, so forth, right? But that's an awful experience, right? I don't want my kid walking on the curb next to, you know, as much as we love buses are kind of an awful experience, right? When you're walking, coming that close to you, driving 30 miles an hour up and down the, you know, so that kind of thing is where I'm curious.
yeah, that Jason can pick this up. That was actually one of the decision points as a part of this process, is to try to narrow down the transit facility itself. And there was public process and debate on the board regarding that. I don't know, Jason, if you have that handy, a little bit more detail, but I think we have a little bit of time. You could look at, you know, flash up maybe some of the alternatives that were discussed as a part of the process.
Yeah, I maybe don't have them at my fingertips, but
And that's okay.
yeah,
We did look at them last year, so it's really, you know, just a comment, because we should show that rendering in the winter, right? Slush.
yeah. Yeah, and you know, I think your point is well taken that you know, so one of the, I guess, parameters that we operated in for division is not to generally work within the existing right of way. And so if you look at, and your comment is not new, I think just looking at the sidewalk environment, where it's, if you're directly next to a lane, you know, whether it's a bus or a car, you know, it's just not, it's not a good walking environment. And so I think there was, you know, some difficulty in doing kind of like end-to-end complete curb. You know, if you're keeping the same amount of lanes, you're not going to necessarily move the curb and sidewalk for 8.5 miles, or, you know, for a long, you know, that starts to create, you know, it's cost and other challenges. So I think the response that at least I've landed on and for this is looking at where there are opportunity areas. So whereas you may not be able to, you know, make it a perfect sidewalk for 7 miles, but maybe there's areas around the station areas where you can get some spot improvements to make those walking trips, you know, to get to, you know, the neighborhood on the east side, you know, more pedestrian friendly than just walking next to, you know, a lane of cars going 40 miles an hour. So I think, you know, as part of the station design, that will be done with the preliminary engineering and also coordinating with, you know, other potential land use planning activities, is to find where can there be spot improvements, so it's not such a, you know, onerous feeling to be walking in that environment.
Yeah, I think the next level really can take it even further. Are there property owners along the route that would invite, you know, a stop location and a nicer, more of a Main Street environment on there, like Northtown, for example? You know, if they have the option of keeping it like it is, where you're out at the curb in the street, or try to make it an amenity that gets pulled into the site, maybe as part of redevelopment. I know that it's part of that discussion up in the Mead area too. So there may be opportunities to really radically rethink You know, I'm sure a lot of the stops will still be on the curb, and we'll be trying to make those environments nicer. But there may be bigger aspirations possible along the route. Division, you know, is still a state highway too, so we have our WashDOT partners as a part of this discussion, and with that comes, you know, really takes quite a bit of work to bring them around to those nicer urban amenities on what it would still be a state route. So you can look what we did with the division project through downtown, you know, trying to do some planters and adding some trees and, you know, shortening some of the crossing distances at the intersections. And yeah, moving curb lines gets expensive really fast, purchase a right of way and drainage and everything else. And so that, all that I think would be in balance as we deep dive further.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Okay. Moving on, I see Mr. Gwynn. I'll just hand it over to you, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you. All right. Well, I am Nathan Gwynn, and I'm here with Amanda Beck, my colleague from City of Spokane Planning. I hope everybody can see my screen okay. And we are here to kind of continue the review of the proposed residential code initiatives and development code changes from your last workshop, when we started reviewing the topics of the code changes in further detail, kind of giving that deep background. And today we're reviewing the remaining amendment topics for phase 1 and focusing on permit topics and permit processes. So a reminder of the documents that are guiding us in this effort. They include the comprehensive plan that was adopted in 2001, and that has a annual amendment cycle, as you're aware, that in the built-in periodic update schedule. Those timing events guide the timing of these regulations, and the phasing really drives what's being presented now versus in future phases. And then the last periodic update was the Shaping Spokane update in 2017, and that involved public engagement activities and policy focus groups to update the chapters, including the housing chapter and housing element of the plan. And the next update is scheduled in 2026. And then the Housing Action Plan, which was adopted last year, and related documents listed several informed actions for the community to address the current housing affordability crisis facing our region, which, and one of the priorities from the Housing Action Plan being to increase the housing supply, and the city's share of these actions are all still under the umbrella of the Shaping Spokane Comprehensive Plan. So the graphic at the, this graphic represents the range of some of the single family, two family, and multifamily housing types in Spokane. And the bottom screen, the graphics on the bottom of the screen pulled out from that are some of the options that are housing types of focus for more flexibility in development forms for these first phase amendments. So note that single family homes, which is the option on the far left, could still be built everywhere. They're allowed now as part of this, but we're focusing on ways to make development of other housing types easier, and want to highlight for discussion permit processes today, which can affect how efficiently or feasibly the supply of lots and sites for development can be prepared, or permits can be approved so that these single family and other housing types can be developed in Spokane. And just a reminder of the past residential code amendments. The city originally adopted the Residential Development Code as part of its Unified Development Code in 2006 to implement the comprehensive plan, and introduced new kinds of housing such as cottage housing and separate accessory dwelling units. And then changes since to the development code included in 2012 the Infill Housing Task Force with the compact zoning and garage wall limitations, as well as pocket residential development, a new form of development. In 2014 with unit lot subdivisions, followed by 2018 and 2019 with more development code revisions, encouraging infill, more pocket residential and cottage housing, compact lots, attached housing, and height exceptions for residential multifamily and residential high density. And all of this information is, at least for the most recent amendments, is still available on the city's webpage. And you can find that at the Infill Housing Strategies webpage online. So the proposed amendments last month, we discussed accessory dwelling units, duplexes, attached homes, and lot size transitions. That's the new residential development shown on the left. And our presentation today picks up on the right side with regulations for modifying permit processes to accommodate residential and other development. And we'll start with short plats, which is a type of subdivision of land, and for the first 15 minutes or so, followed by discussion, and then short-term rentals, and then environmental review under the State Environmental Policy Act. And these 7 items are all part of the first phase of residential development code amendments. We have a workshop scheduled with the Plan Commission coming up in 2 weeks, January 26th, to continue discussion about those topics we covered last time, including accessory dwelling units, lot size transition, duplexes, and attached homes. And in terms of public engagement, we are requesting written comments. And so we've been to pop-up events, and we had some people sign up for email updates at the Winter Market and Riverfront Park last month on 2 occasions. We talked to people in person, which was great, at the Winter Market. And we're scheduling open houses for toward the end of the month. And then a project webpage is live now with videos and blogs. And videos are being developed, as well as more blog material. And you can find that at on the city's webpage, project webpage for Shaping Spokane Housing. So I'll dive next into the permit processes, starting with short plats of short subdivisions up to 9 lots. And we're looking at things, as you know, to improve the process. So asking for your attention on these options we've identified, see how they're meeting the intent of the Housing Action Plan and other documents, making these processes more efficient, more user-friendly for customers, making more land available for development faster in coordination with the other efforts that are identified in the Housing Action Plan. So this is all part of a coordinated set of actions. And so, as you know, we're exploring, the city is exploring how to reduce time or cost of the notification processes associated with short subdivisions. And reducing the cost through the notification method might mean that 2-lot short plats provide no notice. And so that's really the focus today is providing no notice for 2-lot short plats, or a different method for short plats with 3 or more lots. So that's another change. For short plats with SEPA or State Environmental Policy Act environmental review, those that are subject to that, which is relatively uncommon, but if it's on land covered by water, it's not exempt from the SEPA. There would be no change, so existing notice level would remain for those. And by reducing processing time, such as removing all public notice, that would deliver a decision more quickly, so lots can be built on sooner. Currently, we're requiring a notification map and a posted sign, and under the city's code. So that would be that's something to look at, is reducing cost through not requiring a posted sign, for example, or reducing cost and notification for reducing the public comment period, or removing it for some projects. So just taking a step back, looking at the general components for any application for subdivision, that starts with land, following to the right, a survey and application. This all leads to the public process and decision for preliminary subdivision approval. And the public process that's on the right there is the focus of the proposed change. And so after preliminary approval, there may be construction of utilities and streets to prepare the lots for development. And at this stage, Fewer lots can mean a different level of construction. Certainly, more lots would mean more probable construction, whereas fewer lots would mean probably less. And this is one way that new sites can be prepared for residential development. And once that's accepted, the final document recorded with the county is the final plat or map of the short subdivision. Looking at how this is laid out in state law, it's considered part of the local project review in Washington state, decision of the local government, and subject to timelines and procedures for land use applications under the local code, including notices of the application to the public if required, and for appeals. And the state requires that a city may not approve a preliminary plat unless it makes written findings regarding certain matters that are identified in the statute. So this is the second part, or the lower part, in the subdivision statute, for written findings that the project will serve the public use and interest, and consider appropriate provisions for facilities, other relevant facts, open spaces, drainage ways, streets or roads, alleys, etc. So now looking at how they're defined, now that we've reviewed the state law, turning to how they're governed locally. Again, plat is another word for the map that's approved for the subdivision. And the short plat is defined in state law that cities can define that as having up to 9 lots. So in Spokane, we've defined the threshold between a regular or long plat containing 10 lots or more, which is a different application process approved by the hearing examiner than a short plat, which is 9 lots or less. And this means the city can define it as an administrative decision by the planning director instead of the hearing process that's required by a regular plat. The city's webpage has a list of resources for all different types of permit processes. One is the preliminary short plat process. And so this is taken from that resource. There's focusing just on the preliminary short plat process. That's that administrative process that's adopted locally by our regulations for the approval of these applications. There are several steps, as you can see, starting on the left side. The notification area is established, and a traffic study that's not typically required, and then an application submission and agency review. That leads to the determination of a complete application. So there's already been some agency review and notification as part of that determination of complete application. And then on the left, on the right side, step 5, that's the notice of application, which contains the provisions for public comment and notice. That's the focus of this proposed change. And then there can be a SEPA threshold determination. That's that environmental review under the State Environmental Policy Act, except again, usually short plats are exempt unless on lands covered by water. And then finally, a decision's made, followed by a potential appeal process. And there's no process set out in state law, again, for approval of short plats. So cities and counties are required by the statute to adopt by ordinance their own regulations and procedures that provide for the summary approval of short plats through an administrative process. At the final short plat stage, so that's following preliminary approval, there are a number of steps also that are outlined on the city's website for final short plats. These are all internal or reviews by relevant agencies based on the original application. It's really, the final plat approval is in the nature of a ministerial, non-discretionary process. So the 4 steps on the left are really through the city, routing and submitting resubmittals if required, and then final signature. And then on the right side, that's handled with the county treasurer and assessor, recording, and then return before building permits can be applied for. So looking just at the notification associated with short subdivisions. Again, preliminary short plat. After that determination of complete application, the applicant is provided with a notice of application and posts the notice at the project site and mails the notice to individuals that are identified in the notification district map. That's a 400-foot area, affects a 400-foot area near the property. And the state, there are some state provisions that govern when there is a notification, notice of application, in terms of time period for comments and the contents that are in that notice. And then again, at the final short plat stage, there's no notice now. The applicant just takes that to the county auditor. It gets recorded. There's no mailed or posted notice at that stage. So returning again, recalling the proposed change and why these changes are proposed, the Housing Action Plan does suggest other changes to other permit process improvements where it's demonstrated that code or development regulation or ordinance changes will result in a more efficient permit process for customers. And then related documents, the City Council's implementation plan calls for creating and promoting a user-friendly permit process related to short plats, as well as some other provisions. And so I want to recall again the 2-lot short plat that's proposed, recommended for no notice, and then 3 to 9 lots with mailed notice only. And again, with short plats with SEPA, there would be no change. There would still be the notification map plus the posted notice sign. And you see that reflected in the text in page 8 of your agenda packets. So this is that excerpt from that text showing the change in the code to the table where the different notice requirements are listed. And that third column, the notice of application, you can see for short plats currently, it requires a posted and individual notice, but that would be changing for short plats to no notice for 2 lots only, and then a short plat with 3 or more lots, so that's again up to 9 lots, would be individual notice and not a posted notice sign. And incidentally, the individual mailed notice does contain quite a bit more information than is required for the posted notice sign. So there would be quite a bit of information that would still be going out about that, but without the cost of the posted notice sign.
Nathan, can I ask a question?
Yes, Commissioner Francis.
During the short plat process with regards to notice, are there typically many comments that come in?
You know, there typically are, sometimes there are not, and sometimes there are typically a few.
Okay. I mean, I guess have some of them come up as relatively controversial, or I guess it might just depend on the specific plat that they're talking about.
Yeah, sometimes the public comment can help. Actually, the developer may take some of that in the design of their plat consideration about, you know, neighboring properties, that sort of thing. Sometimes the comments that we can really use to help guide the design of the project, sometimes they'll identify like streams, you know, not really small water features or whatever that we may not have in our mapping utilities, and that may give some additional information to the process. But quite a bit of the comment we really can't do a lot with. It's just related to traffic or additional growth kind of complaints against that. But sometimes they do have substantive comment that can affect the project.
Okay, thank you.
Nathan and Lewis, what's a typical motivation to do this? Is it always like a fee simple motivation to do a attached unit or something, or is I'm just curious, you know, or would some of this go away if you're allowed to do more units, if you're keeping a rental? Am I thinking about this correctly?
Yeah, these are 2 fee simple lots. And oftentimes they are, you know, kind of pieces that have been passed over or had more difficulty, or they were a farmhouse on a couple acres that, you know, the rest of it got subdivided and they kept a couple acres for themselves. Or we have quite a few through lots. We call them through lots. They are one larger lot that fronts on 2 streets. And so that they were like a big backyard. And so these folks come in and want to split them in half so they could sell off the back half and fronts on a different street. You know, I think we've been, what, Nate, we're currently averaging about 30 short plats a year. And that can range up to 9 lots to split of those through lots. So
Do you think, do a lot of people come in and divide up a big lot so that they can just simply build more and then they maintain ownership, or is that not really a common motivation?
normally I think these are sold off to a builder will, you know, develop the lots that are created, or they'll sell them off to another entity that does additional development. Could be like a big side yard that didn't have underlying platting. You know, they'll parcel that off and then it gets sold and developed. I don't think it's normally a homeowner that is developing these. They may benefit from the parsing and the sale of it. Or say, you know, the parents pass away and they've got a big side lot and the kids are wise enough to kind of do a small subdivision themselves to take advantage of a few additional lot potential.
Yeah, this could really be for any purpose. You know, it could be, it doesn't have to be a residential, even a residential area. It could be, you know, an industrial or commercial short plat, but it would be for the purpose of separate sale or lease.
Hey, do we have an image? I thought we did in a previous presentation, a couple examples of what these end up looking like. Plats that have short plats that have come in.
Yeah, I mean, there's an example in the site plan that's proposed here. So this is a property. It's basically 150 feet or so square. That's being, looks like there may have been a parcel line down the middle that's now it's being divided into 3 lots. So you can see there's buildings on one of the lots proposed, and then 2 proposed vacant lots. And so there may be cases like this where there's just enough land to do 1 or 2 more lots, and then this could make the difference in terms of reducing cost or notice, reducing time. That 2-week period for a 2-lot short plat would go away, and then maybe a week or so of passing time, so that it would bring the property to being ready for development sooner.
So in this case right here, this would be potentially a no notice situation because one's a boundary line adjustment and then it's a split.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the mechanics of that, but we're defining this as a 2-lot short plat that would be that would have no notice. So this might fall somewhere. I'm not really sure. It would either be no notice, you're only creating net 1 additional parcel.
Okay.
I think that would make sense.
So even though you're taking 2 half parcels and
yeah,
combining them.
And our city staff, we do have a track record of these, you know, a reduced cost for the application for the last couple of years. So so this aligning the 2-lot no notice would kind of align with that process.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess just to finish off, again, bringing it back to this sort of purpose slide and describing the change to reduce time and cost, and then open it up for commissioner discussion, you know, leading to any questions or concerns, and then whether this seems to be ready for hearing. This aspect of the proposal for no notice for 2-lot short plats, or 3 to 9 lots requiring mailed notice only.
So in the case of mailed notice, that is a physical mailing.
It is, yeah, to property owners and occupants and taxpayers on property within 400 feet of the proposal.
Okay.
Yeah, the purpose of that is to, help understand how, again, it would differ depending on the scale of the project, but it could, our city understanding is that this is the chance to provide facts that reveal whether a proposal meets the criteria for a decision, or to communicate to the local neighbors, again, as Lewis mentioned, to the local neighborhood conditions that an applicant may not be aware of, that and that might help shape a better project. So those are the kinds of reasons behind public notice.
So in the case of the 2-lot short plat with no notice, is there still department comment?
There is. So that determination of completeness isn't made until a 14-day review period by requests or comments from interested agencies. That does include, you may recall in 2015 there was the change to better coordinate neighborhood notification, and so that includes neighborhood councils that are part of that 2-week kind of comment period before the application's even determined complete. That would still stay the same. It's just following the determination of completeness, there would be just a proceeded decision rather than to a public notice.
This is Mary. I've got a comment.
Yes, hi, Mary.
Hi. I understand how the reasons for wanting to change some of this from the developer standpoint. I
think you're on mute. Just for the last sentence or so.
I think my fingers ought to stay off the keyboard. Anyway, I am concerned from a neighborhood standpoint that neighbors could have something happening right next door to them that they have no notice of. And I don't think I'd want that happening to me. It may be perfectly okay, but I am concerned on the no notice. I mean, is there some sort of compromise where you put up a sign, but you don't mail things out, or something where the neighborhood would actually know something was going on, and maybe it's perfectly okay and maybe there's nothing to say? But on the other hand, like Lewis said, it could be somebody who understands there's a stream or a underground spring or something that the developer doesn't know about, and there's just no notice at all. That bothers me. That's my neighborhood perspective.
Thank you. Any other commissioners or?
Hi, Nathan. I have a question. This is Carol.
Yes. Hi, Carol.
How much does it cost to put out the notice of application sign, the one that's to the right, pictured to the right?
Yeah, my understanding is if there's just one sign that can, with the stand, that can be somewhere upwards of $700. Some people I've seen have done, they've attached it to like a wall or a fence post or something and saved a little cost there. But those are maybe probably some of the larger signs in the region. The Spokane County has a different procedure that's a little bit less expensive, and other jurisdictions we've looked at have used smaller signs.
And this is the one that we use, and ours are about $700 in Spokane.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, per sign.
Mm-hmm.
The signs do take a while, do take some time to make too, so that can extend by a week or two, the overall process.
Mm-hmm. I do like the idea of seeing a sign on the project.
I actually think, this is Mary again, I actually think it could save with us, so there'd be less backlash where when people don't know anything's happening and suddenly something's going on that there was no notice of at all. So if there's some sort of compromise, like a sign but no mailing, and that $700 doesn't sound like a whole lot. It seems like it might be worth it.
Hey,
Yeah,
Nathan,
oh, sorry.
are there examples of, you said to achieve a better project outcome? Are there examples like that that would address what Mary and Carol are asking, or that are examples of where a project was made better by?
Yeah, I think the anecdotal, I wasn't aware there was a spring on the property, or I wasn't aware that stream had been identified. That could help. Again, I think that in terms of the compromise, that is, we're looking at the, sort of the, sorry about my screen has gone blank suddenly. The that 3 to 9 lots being maybe still a threshold where at 3 lots, it does seem like there would be some more neighborhood interest at that scale than simply 2 lots. So I think it probably, there is some more communication that happens with the 2 lot short plat and the notice going away, but I don't know if it, at that scale, you see the improvement to the project that you would at a scale where you're creating multiple lots.
So, but ultimately, it's going to be up to the planning director or the hearing examiner anyway, right? But are examples then where they made some sort of change in their decision, or required a development agreement or something based on, the input? Mary, do you know examples like that too also?
I don't know any particularly, but I just, it concerns me that people won't know what's going on until it's probably too late to say something. And I'm not just saying, oh dear, I don't want that built there, but that they actually have a real concern about something that isn't going to go real well if that's what happens. So I think it's, and I can't imagine the planning director's going to know every dot and tittle about every piece of land. There's reason for multiple heads looking at something.
Sometimes, this an opportunity for the adjacent property owners, the persons wanting to subdivide, and the neighbors to talk about the design of their project, orientation of buildings, that sort of thing, more nuanced. Or even, the neighboring property might buy a sliver or something from, as the plat goes forward to make their lot better and their environment better. So it kind of just brings people together at that stage to talk about things too sometimes, on these small scale plats. I guess a mailing would still do that with the adjacent property owners. I guess the sign really is just for the, I guess we consider that for the greater general public.
But certainly the neighbors would see a sign that size, I would think. Unless they're just holed up in their basement or something.
It looks like Commissioner Bank has his hand up, and then.
Yeah, just a quick question on this, and I think it probably applies to a lot of the things that you're presenting in this kind of batch of code changes here. Where are these ideas coming from, and is there some sort of data or idea to back up the reasons for taking an approach like this, right? Like, do you have some sort of understanding on how much time that may cut off of projects, or how many projects may see a benefit from this? I'm going back to efficacy and spending our time working on things that we know are going to be efficacious. And so can you address that a little bit, and sort of the genesis of some of these ideas and where that information is coming from?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the reduction of the public comment period is that 15-day period of time, plus any time it takes to generate the notice. There is a separate application for the creation of the notification district map, and there's probably a little bit of time there. But as far as reduction of time, it really is just limited to the proposal for the 2-lot short plat, and it really is probably just that 3-week period where you prepare and and administer the public comment period. That isn't going to be, the public comments don't really affect the time frame. If you do require the public comment period and notification in some form, whether it be a posted sign or a newspaper notice or something, and you let that period run, the comments that come back are still required to be dealt with in the same time frame. So they don't hold up the project. There's still a clock running on the city's decision.
Okay, thank you.
So Nathan, I kind of think of this like obviously a comp plan amendment. It's not project level though, right? I mean, if I'm short platting a piece of property, I don't have to disclose what I'm designing for that property, right?
It is defined as part of local project review, but you don't have to, necessarily. That's a good question. I think depending on the use, you may need to design your project in a way that would accommodate that use, such as for, for attached housing or some kind of proposed use. But, you could also just subdivide the property and just say it's going to be for an approved use, and you haven't made your mind up yet about what that use will be. You still have the option to figure that out later. And you may not even be the person who's going to build it, so you don't even know. You have no way of knowing. You're just going to sell it. And Mr. President, looks like there's someone online who has their hand up. I'm not sure we're taking comments from the public at this time, but wanted to acknowledge that and encourage anyone to submit comments in writing if they have any.
Yeah, I think that's right. I don't see that though. Do you?
Yeah, I have, looks like Chris Neely has had his hand up for some time.
Yeah, Mr. Neal, I'm afraid we can't take public comment right now during a workshop, but thank you, and definitely invite you to please submit questions to Nathan as the project manager.
Thank you. Yeah, and if there's no other concerns or comments about whether this might be ready for hearing at this time, we can move on to the next subject.
So Nathan, I know we're just getting bogged down on this, probably too short for the 2-lot one. As part of the application completion process, that's when the neighborhood notification piece is done. Is that correct?
Yes, at the time the application is submitted.
Okay. So even on a 2-lot short plat with no notice, the neighborhood council is still going to get notified. Is that correct?
Yeah. There are individuals designated by the code to receive neighborhood notice at the time the agencies are reviewing. So there's different city departments, potentially county or state departments, depending on the project, and then tribes that might be affected. At that stage, the designated person in the neighborhood council as the representative is notified. So a couple of you may be that person and may have seen these notifications.
Yeah,
for all types of projects.
Notices for my neighborhood before. So anyway, and I don't know if this would address Mary and Carol's concerns, but on the short plat, no notice, and what if it is just adjacent properties or something like that get a mail notification instead of a broader set of properties? I mean, how much impact would that have if they're just notifying adjacent properties?
It wouldn't change the amount of time, but it would just reduce the, I guess, number of letters that are sent.
Yeah, because, of course, if you have an apartment complex directly adjacent, you have to notify all the occupants as well, or how does that work?
Correct. Yeah, you would notify all of the occupants of that building.
All right.
So, Mary, Carol, does that that address any of your concerns? Because I'm trying to understand where the outcome could change if I'm just simply saying I'm going to subdivide but I'm not proposing or disclosing what projects that was or what my intent was, right? To sell, to build something, so forth, right? So you might not have enough information anyway, if I'm understanding it correctly.
Well, my understanding is that if your piece of property is next to mine, or even mine as the chair of the neighborhood council, and I hear about it, I can at least call you and address the issue, and find out more about it. But to not know a thing, I think is problematic and might cause neighborhoods to be more concerned than they might need to be if they understood what was going on.
Yeah. Well, I would be a good neighbor, Mary, and I would tell you anyway, but
I'm sorry, I'm just using it as an example.
but I'm serious. I'm trying to wrap my head around what if I'm your neighbor and I don't have plans yet, what I'm going to do with it, or I don't want to disclose to you, but I mean, obviously you're going to find out that I'm going to subdivide, right? Short platted, and the outcome wouldn't change, right?
Well, it depends. It depends if, I share sewer pipe with your place, or if I, have issues about it, I might want to talk to you. I'm just saying.
No, I agree. And then, but a lot of this would come out then when in a permitting process, right? When we start
I
to
would
get
always
into-
go for communication sooner rather than later.
Interesting.
So
Okay.
I have another question. How much money are we talking about saving? I guess it would depend on where the short plat, if it's next to an apartment building, or if it's just next to regular single families. I think
Right.
I think we need to consider just being open, and even though we want to reduce the time, reduce the cost, I think we need to weigh the cost as to which would give us the appearance of being more open, and we could still move the process along for the person that wants to, or that has the applicant.
Well, it does put a pause on the process to wait for the comment period, so that 3-week savings time that's sort of proposed as part of the reduction in notice for the 2-lot short plat does represent, financing considerations for, nearly a month's worth of time. So there could be some cost savings there, as well as for the notification district map. That's a $150 application, plus then the cost to mail and title company running those mailing labels to determine who's there based on who's listed. So yeah, so there's some, probably, depending on what the decision is, ultimately what gets adopted, there could be something like something in the range of $1,000 for a relatively simple 2-lot short plat in savings, plus then whatever savings is associated with the finance costs that are carried on the property, if any. Does that answer that question?
This is just one more question. This would be a saving to the applicant or the city?
To the applicant. The city is really recovering our costs in terms of processing or attempting to. Yeah, and I see Amanda has put in the chat our contact information for the project if you have any comments and questions. And I think unless we're ready to, we're prepared to discuss the item of whether this is ready for hearing, this as proposed, then we're ready to move on to the next subject area.
Yeah, I think we can move on. Any commissioner not comfortable moving this forward to a hearing? Mary, you can weigh in too.
Well, I don't vote, but I would like to see a slight modification so it doesn't get far along without at least the neighbors knowing. And I think it can be done fairly inexpensively. And on most properties, somebody's already buying the property, so if there's a mortgage, it doesn't change the mortgage amount. It just makes you pay the full mortgage amount one month more. It doesn't look like it's a lot on either side, and could mean that there was less people being upset later down the line.
But Nathan, I think your example was financing on potentially a construction loan or something like that. We're talking about 3-4 weeks.
Right. Yeah,
Right.
almost a month. Yeah, in terms of interest and yeah, the time period for a construction loan. Again, it could be just like Mary mentioned, a mortgage or something that some existing homeowner, and a month isn't much, but with a tighter loan time period, it could make a difference.
Well, and there's also uncertainty on whether or not you could get certain financing without a decision. So, okay. Well, I think we better move on. Thank you for that one.
Thank you all.
One more, right?
There are two more, and Amanda's going to take the lead on those.
Sorry, Amanda.
No, that's fine.
Is everyone? So I guess I blew the schedule. I'm sorry. So we're scheduled to go to 4. Everyone okay to go longer? And what do you propose? Push through both of them?
Yeah, I think we should try to get obviously you're asking the commissioners, but
everyone.
we would like to get through as far as possible. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this stuff is important. Let's just knock it out and move on.
Great.
Story topic, but I hope we can get through all of it. All right, so the second of the 3 amendments that we're looking at amending is for short-term rentals. This code amendment proposes to permit short-term rentals in non-residential zoning districts. So commercial zones, centers and corridors, form-based code, downtown zones, even industrial, if it has residential use that's a limited use or permitted. If you look on Airbnb or VRBO, you see why making this code amendment is necessary, especially in our downtown zones. This will ensure there isn't a code enforcement issue, and then it really sets the stage for research and code changes for a future phase that will look at how short-term rentals are affecting the affordable housing supply. It is called out really nicely, I think, in Council's implementation plan in Strategy 2.7, which says to expand allowable zones for short-term rentals to match the current actual usage to improve licensing compliance. So functionally, short-term rentals act as an accessory use to a primary residential use, and the regulations are outlined in Chapter 17Z.316. So the code has 2 types. There's a type A and a type B, though when we looked through our permitting data, it indicates that since 2017, we haven't issued a type B. Type B are based on a bed and breakfast use, and that commercial meeting would be an event like a wedding, a banquet, or any event for direct or indirect compensation. And the permitting process is outlined. So you would get your business license, you apply for the short-term rental permit, and then as long as you're operating in compliance, you just do a $100 annual renewal fee. So this code change expands the allowable zones for short-term rentals, which effectively matches current actual usage to improve the licensing compliance. So operating short-term rentals will need to apply for a permit and comply with the building code, which will allow us to do inspections. And that really is to ensure that guests are staying in safe residential units. I don't know if any of you have traveled and stayed in an Airbnb or a VRBO, whatever platform you're using, and had to flip a breaker because something is plugged into, let's say, an extension cord in a way that would not be permitted by building code. So we're trying to make sure that people aren't doing that. We tailored the language in Commission's packet to be surgical in nature and just address expanding the allowable zoning districts. But I do want to emphasize, we're sensitive to the fact that this type of use does have an impact on the housing supply. We've been hearing, our current planners have been hearing anecdotally from people as it's kind of snowballing a little bit, I think, that landlords or management companies are buying properties, and rather than having them as long-term rentals, which would be more than that 30 days, or not 30 days, excuse me, 30 nights, they're becoming short-term rentals, which takes it out of the supply for our actual residents. So we will be looking at that in the future. But for right now, we just want to focus on expanding that use into the other zoning districts. And so based on the draft code that was in your packet, are there any questions or concerns? Do you feel this is ready to go to hearing? What kind of discussion do you have?
Amanda, it's Lori.
Yeah.
I worked on the original Airbnb or short-term rental ordinance back in 2009 or 10. And the research was illuminating because what we learned, it was very difficult to find out where all of the short-term rentals were because they don't give their addresses. And so they're even more restrictive now. It is extremely difficult to know how many we actually have. Anecdotally, we think we have about 3,000 in the city, but that could be more, that could be less. We really don't know. And Council President and I were looking at some other ways that we could get compliance. We were also, for me, when we originally worked on this, wanting to make sure that Airbnb and all the short-term rentals were not at an advantage over our hotels and motels, because that's what was happening. So there are lots of tax and license things and safety things that these don't have to follow, but a hotel does. And so that means that if the fees that they pay are much less than, say, the Davenport or whatever. In addition, I don't know if you all saw the fire chief's story today about safety. And he is proposing he wants to talk about safety measures in all housing, both new and already existing housing and apartments. And so that is something that we're going to need to look at. And I know that we're just talking about increasing the zones where these are permitted, but I think this is a larger conversation going forward. And we really need to look at the impact, as you said, Amanda, on the amount of housing stock that is taken out of affordable housing for people to rent or to buy. And then whether it's equitable for those who are operating motels and hotels. And then finally, the safety issues. And where the heck are these? I don't know where. So there are a lot of them. They don't have to comply, and there's no way to find them and make them comply. So there's going to need to be a mechanism, or we're going to need to hire a consultant that can identify where these short-term rentals are so that we can make sure that they're in compliance. So those are some of my concerns. And just know that I've been talking with council presidents so that we can find out other ways that they will actually be paying their fair share. So those are some of my concerns.
Thank you. Commissioner Bank?
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on that. The council member got a lot of my points out there. This was one that really raised a big eyebrow for me upon reading the agenda packet. And if I guess as a point of clarification, the idea with this tweak is to essentially daylight the existing Airbnb uses. In other words, we can report now without fear of being shut down because this use is allowed. in this zone now. Is that correct? That's the assumption for this?
Right. So some of this code amendment would be ensuring that we're not having a huge code compliance issue. I don't know, given the number that Councilmember Kinnear mentioned, if we would have enough code enforcement staff to even handle that level of units. So we want to make sure that they are permitted uses. That way people can come into compliance.
Okay. You know, I agree wholeheartedly with Councilmember Kinnear on this. You know, the short-term rental thing really is one of the underlying root causes. There's a number of root causes, but this is a big one of the housing shortage right now. And I think if this whole discussion that we're having right now is predicated on trying to fix the housing crisis or do something about the housing crisis, I have a little bit of cognitive dissonance around allowing more of them. You see how that's sort of not jiving in my head. So from my perspective, I would love to just see some more teeth behind this or some more action as part of this initial effort to begin to allocate some resources towards quantifying, towards bringing them into compliance, et cetera, because it's a relatively low-hanging fruit in the sense that it doesn't require new buildings to be built, et cetera, et cetera. It's really just what is there, understanding what is there, and getting them to come into compliance and getting a better understanding of the impacts on supply in particular. So I'd love to see some more teeth around the backside of that and less of just sort of saying, okay, you're legal now. So now you can present yourself and not have to worry about being shut down.
Commissioner Bank, I think some of sorry,
yeah.
Louis.
Okay. We're trying to make them legals and then kick off a second phase to this project that will top to bottom re-examine short-term rentals throughout the city.
Okay.
A lot of these buildings they're going into old apartment buildings and such that would need to be brought up to code. And so that we're hoping that would help, demonstrate what kind of commitment they would have to operate more like a motel or hotel with fires, life safety, exit plans, all of that wrapped into it. So we're trying to begin this conversation with this group, and then immediately after this is done, engage in a process to update our short-term rental system.
And that's great. And again, wholeheartedly support that. I just, all I have to go off of is the information that's being presented to us in the packets right here. And from my perspective, this is an incomplete effort without that second piece. So thank you both for that clarification.
Councilmember Kinnear.
Louis, I think we might have it backward. I would like to look at the compliance piece first and how we can tighten up our regs, and then talk about where we can put them in other zones, because, as I said, it's really difficult to identify where they are right now. And we've talked about partnering with the Hotel Association to hire people to find them, but it's a laborious process. And Airbnb is not going to cooperate. They just will not. So I would like to see it flipped, and let's tighten up the regs. Let's get all of our safety precautions in place. Let's look at making them comply and finding them. Then let's do this, because if we open this is my thinking, and I agree with Jesse. If we open this up and say, okay, you're good to go here, I think we're really not going to have a handle on where they are. We're going to have an even bigger problem going forward. I'd like to get a handle on how many we have, where they are, where they're located, and then go with what we're talking about here. That's just my instinctive how to proceed. Gut reaction.
Internally, we're concerned about identifying all these illegal units in these zones and then being forced to, send code enforcement out immediately and having that system be swamped while we're dialoguing about changing the system. But I understand your concern too. It's how do we touch this without making our problems even bigger from an administrative perspective?
And that's why we can hire consultants, and we can hire short-term staff to get this under control. And we don't have to rely on current, and we did hire 4 additional code enforcement folks, but we could hire some short-term folks to get this under control and just target this.
So what's the land use concern here? I mean, obviously I understand the life safety and agree. I'm having trouble understanding the line between a long-term and short-term rental and why a short-term would trigger certain, different requirements. You start to approach hotel and so forth. It's operating more like a business. I'm hearing than a long-term rental, or is it that they're in violation of number of units per parcel?
It's really that they're in more commercial buildings in these zones a lot of times. And they would, if they were truly identified as a commercial use, they would need to go through that kind of change of use process to demonstrate how they're meeting life safety, fire concerns, all of that. And, these could be, a unit on the 5th floor of a commercial building today. And they may not have any of the same kind of treatment that would be in that kind of, in the building code, that use would be, they wouldn't be up to the standard. There's a lot of items in a hotel or motel designed to protect people that are only there for a day or two, and may not know exit paths and all of that, or have proper fire systems in place, even for notification. And there's quite a bit of building that would be triggered. So
to piggyback off of what Louis has said, that I think addresses some of the concerns that have been brought up. When we drafted this code and reviewed it with our building reviewers, the thing that isn't probably reflected in the code that's in your packet is that if you are in a building and you have multiple units for short-term rentals, that basically by the building code would consider you as a change of use. And so by the building code, you would be required to make some changes. That might be sprinklering, that might be smoke alarms, different than in, say, a single family residential building. I understand the concerns, and I think maybe some of this might actually be addressed in other parts of our code in regard to what the building code requires. But yeah, so some of the land use concerns would be that they're operating, as Louis said, in a commercial building. Also, I'm sure we're all aware of, articles that people are having issues in the neighborhood with the uses. They become quote unquote party houses. It takes up a lot of parking. So we're trying to make sure that they're still staying as an accessory use to whatever that primary residential use is going to be.
James just brought up, we could add language in here clarifying that this is not going to make illegal uses today conforming with the code. That's not the intention of this. They would, if they don't meet building code and change of use provisions today, they would still be an illegal use. But then in our next phase, as we identify them, we'll be notifying them through this process of what, is required, and they'll need to be brought into conformance. So I think we can add some language to this. I think that's just an assumed factor in our world, that they wouldn't be legal if they don't meet all of the current life safety building code requirements, but we can add that provision to here to make that abundantly clear.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd love to see some of that extra color added into this. On the face of it, I just read allowing more short-term rentals, where I'm sort of under the impression that we should be allowing fewer short-term rentals. And so I think that extra bit of color is really important, I guess, if nothing else, for public understanding of this.
Jesse, when you say that, I think it's very clear on type B, and to Lewis's point, triggering obviously life safety, concerns and so forth. But are you including type A when you make that comment?
Go back. I'm
type A is just the overnight. And my understanding is residential rental.
Yeah, where I'm coming from is the proliferation of these units taking housing supply out of the market and adding fuel to the fire of the crisis. And wondering what our position as a city is going to be with respect to the overall number of these units that we're allowing to be removed from the for rent housing pool. that is therefore making it more difficult for people who would like to stay in Spokane, who can't possibly compete with the rental rates that Airbnbs are generating. And to get some sort of balance there. This is a thing that we fought tooth and nail in Denver a couple of years ago over the same issue and granted that's a larger tourist market than this is, but there's a big impact on supply. And so if all of this is going on under the auspices of trying to create more housing or to expand housing choice, et cetera, I think addressing the just sheer quantity of them, which obviously the first step is understanding what that quantity is a biggie. I really do believe that.
Yeah, we are looking at hiring some consultant help that specialize in identifying where these are at. So there's a few different firms out there that are starting to specialize and can quickly identify that. So that'll be a part of what we were hoping to be a kind of a phase 2 to this effort, and to rip open the Band-Aid of short-term rentals and look at it comprehensively citywide, updating our ordinance now that's about 10 years old, and markets changed and even our awareness of the situation since then.
Liz, I would like, when we are at that point, to have Chief Schaefer come in and talk about safety concerns, because when we originally were drafting this legislation, we talked about a sprinkler requirement for any unit that was more than 3 or more bedrooms, because it is short-term rental and people don't necessarily know how to exit. We also talked about not just smoke alarms, but prominent exit signs. So all these, there were so many of these that the fire department identified, and I would like to have him back to talk about some of these if we could.
Now, once we get into that whole building code subject area, that is not our area of expertise. So we start fumbling around pretty quickly. I'm looking for an exit sign right now.
This is Mary. I've got a comment when it's time's right.
Oh, go ahead. Time's right.
Well, I know of people who own housing that have, because of the pandemic and because of not getting their rent, have changed their housing into B&B, Airbnb type units, and have taken them out of the housing stock. And I would hazard a guess that they are not in compliance with their business licenses and fees. And I think that's happened more than just a few times. So I agree with Jesse and with Council Member Kinnear that our bigger issue, if we're talking about housing stock and availability, is to bring those into compliance. Because I think if they had to comply with all of the rules, they might think differently and move them back into rentals.
Okay, so yeah, I agree, Mary. The Amanda and Louis, though, the question before us today is simply, should this open up to all zones? And then the second one, is my understanding, is triggering the type B requirements that will lead into then into potential life safety improvements, so forth, right? Or trigger change of use, things like that, right? Because you're saying there's a gap right now.
Both of those types could trigger, a change of use under the building code.
Correct.
Because type A could be considered a hotel, so forth, right? Something on that order that could require the improvements. Type B obviously is a different use.
Yeah, Amanda, can you go back to the AB slide? So that really, the type AB is really regarding commercial meetings.
Yes.
And doesn't really get to the type of unit or the building type. So we actually haven't had any come in. I don't think we've even had a type B to allow a commercial meeting. Nobody's asked for that since the code's been put into place.
Oh, is that already allowed, you're saying? And
yeah,
Right. Type A and type B are both currently in our code right now. Since we made changes to code, we went through permitting data 2017 to now. We haven't permitted a type B, I think because of that commercial meeting element and its similarity with bed and breakfast. but conceivably you could be required to do building code changes for a change of use, whether you're a type A or type B.
Okay.
You could have a 6-bedroom house that would be considered a type A.
Yeah, change of use within the building code really gets more stringent when it's more of a commercial building, say an apartment building or, you know, a multi-story building that would then trigger quite a few more life safety improvements than just a single house or an ADU that's being used as a short-term rental. But even those will get examined and some things probably mentioned about making sure it's safe. So exit wise and such. Making sure it's got working alarms, you know, CO and fire extinguisher and maybe even a little map on the door if it's a complex building on attic escape. Might even trigger like a ladder situation or something, you know, an interior ladder if it has limited access. Or like I said, I'm getting way out of my skis on this one, but there's all kinds of requirements and review that may help improve life safety situation for buildings.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anyone opposed to recommending moving this to hearing?
Amanda is reaching out to the hotel motel industry as best we can, trying to get in front of them and let them know and explain this to them that it's coming forward also, because we do know they've had concerns in the past about opening this door wide open. So.
Yes, I did reach out to them. I sent your agenda packet to both Visit Spokane and the Hotel Association to let them know about this and invited them to provide any comment that they saw fit on the draft code.
I've got a question.
Yes, Mary?
Besides the additional language that's already been suggested to be added, is there a way to put some language in here that says this is phase 1 of a 2-part project and the next is going to be and happen soon thereafter, looking at short-term rentals in other than the commercial zones? Is there something that would say this is a first step? Because it doesn't say that either.
I think we could put that in the ordinance language. That necessarily wouldn't go into the code itself, but I think in the ordinance language,
Well,
his
yeah,
intent.
even on the slides.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, point. We can bring that up with our future presentations.
And this can't wait to be bundled with that? It's too big of an effort, I'm hearing?
The next phase of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, once again, there's concern about once we go through the process citywide to identify all of the ones being used as short-term rental and having all of these, you know, they may not, because we're going to be notifying all of them and we'll be notifying them that are operating illegally and legally and be a part of that discussion. So we're hoping to put this in place first and then immediately follow up with the process to look at short-term rentals again citywide. It's a complex process. It was quite the process last time around, and I think it's going to be this time.
Okay. Well, I don't hear any opposition, just concerns as voiced. Is that good, Amanda?
All right. Yes. So the last topic tonight is the categorical exemptions for the State Environmental Policy Act. As with the other amendments, this touches on several actions recommended by the guiding documents. Amending our threshold for when a project is subject to environmental review is specifically mentioned in RCW 3670A.600, which is encouraging that construction of additional residential units across Washington. And that says, you know, to adopt the maximum allowable exemption levels in WAC 197-11-800. So SEPA, as the shorthand is known as, is pretty complicated. So I want to provide a little bit of background. It's our foundational environmental law. It followed on the heels of the National Environmental Policy Act, and it was put on the books in 1971. So the act itself is contained in RCW Chapter 4321, but the procedural requirements that we're concerned about are outlined in WAC Chapter 197-11. So in our code, that's codified in Chapter 17E.050. With the environmental review, before a permit is issued for work on a project, the city completes a SEPA determination during which environmental impacts are identified and evaluated, both on a short-term and a long-term horizon. So an applicant will include a SEPA checklist. The items to be covered are outlined specifically in WAC, and it's used by all Washington municipalities. Some, like us, add additional sections in, so we have additional questions about the aquifer. Part of the SEPA review is public comment from adjacent properties, agencies, and tribes. And a part of that comment period is submitting to what's called the SEPA Register, which is the ecology clearinghouse for all SEPA-related permits across the state. And any member of the public can view that. So that's it's kind of in addition, like in our process, we would issue a notice of application or notice of public hearing, and also submit to the SEPA Register, which would include your checklist, any supporting documentation that kind of outlines what you've answered in your SEPA checklist. The lead agency's threshold determination can result in three major types of determinations. You've got your determination of non-significance, and then a mitigated determination of non-significance. So there might be a minor or moderate environmental impact, but the lead agency or other agencies with jurisdiction thinks it could be mitigated, or at least the impact could be reduced in some way. And then the major impacts will kick you into a determination of significance, where you have to do scoping and an environmental impact statement. But we have a public comment period that accompanies this, that's 14 days. So during that 14-day comment period, the lead agency cannot take action. So that's the Cliff Notes version of the environmental review, if you will. It's pretty complicated. I can't tell you how many times I've watched ecologists training on SEPA since I started working here. The part we're focusing on, though, for this code amendment is categorical exemptions. Some actions are exempt from environmental review, meaning if that project is under a certain threshold, it does not have to go through the added time and expense of the SEPA review. The Washington Administrative Code permits for localities to adopt their own flexible thresholds for minor new construction and other projects and actions, so we can tailor what fits to our city's unique needs, and that's currently what we do. Show you on screen next. What you see in the first column is our current thresholds. The second bolded column is the maximum allowed by WAC 197-11-800. And the remaining columns kind of compare the different options that were included in the Commission's packet. As a point of reference, just want to point out 500 cubic yards is about 50 dump trucks worth of dirt. So it's not a small sum. This one is interesting. We're trying to find the right balance, whether that's adopting the maximum that's allowed, whether we only do the maximum allowed for residential minor new development, or potentially we could adopt everything except keep that 500 cubic yard that's already established in our code. Why we're looking at amending this section of code, plain and simple, is that it simplifies and streamlines permitting review both for staff and the development community. It's about predictability. A big element of uncertainty for developers, again, as we've talked about this evening, is the public comment period. So even if that development might meet state and local regulations for approval, things can be slowed down during that public comment period, which adds cost to the overall project. So what changes? This streamlining would decrease the notices sent to entities such as state agencies, tribes, local agencies, and adjacent parcels, because there would be no site posting if you're under the threshold. But anything over the newly established threshold would be subject to SEPA review and go through the notification and public comment process. What you see on screen is just a snip of what's currently in our code. So depending on if you are under or over currently 20 residential units, you may or may not be required to do notice. Due to the complex nature of SEPA, we're required to do a 60-day notification and comment period for agencies and tribes. So while we want to hear from Plan Commission on what direction to take, please know that we're still working on this piece of code and it's not fully ready to go to public hearing. As part of our due diligence, in addition to internal reviews, we've reached out and met with the Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation and Ecology for guidance. We'll be reaching out to the tribes in addition to that 60-day period. Our great planning assistant, Kate Antry, has combed through all of the SEPA records from the SEPA register from 2017 to the end of 2021. We found that during that time period, we had 155 cases, 50 of which, if we were to have adopted the maximum permitted by WAC, so 50 of those cases would have been under threshold. And then of those 50, 10 would have been kicked back due to fill-in excavation. So SEPA is really an either or, or not an either or, excuse me. It's a threshold that looks at multiple. So if you are 20 units, you'd be under threshold. But if your fill or excavation is over 500 cubic yards, you would then be kicked back into a SEPA review. So of the 10 cases that would have been kicked back due to SEPA review, what I think is interesting to note is that the average fill and excavation is what kicked it back into SEPA review. It wasn't the number of residential units being created. And the average for those cases, those 4 cases, was about 780 cubic yards. So we're threading the needle here, trying to streamline processes to encourage development of more residential housing, while also being mindful of the fact that, clearly there is a tipping point in the code with the thresholds, both for the units and that cubic yardage that's in the code. We did talk to the Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation. Obviously, from their perspective, a smaller ground disturbance, whether it's, primarily if you're excavating, that is better in regard to protecting cultural resources that might be on site. But after looking through the cases that Tate pulled, I think that there's a sweet spot we might want to look at. It wasn't something that was put in your packet to consider some number other than 500 cubic yards or the maximum, which is 1,000 cubic yards. But so we're still working on this. It's very complicated. We're also going to be discussing this with the county and hopefully Spokane Valley, in addition to doing that 60-day notification. But I'd love to hear thoughts or concerns on this, as that can also really help guide what we do for the final draft.
What are the other municipalities doing as far as their thresholds for SEPA review?
So the county matches what we have currently. The Valley has increased thresholds. I think they updated theirs in 2018. It sort of depends. There seems to be a trend towards increasing, especially on the west side. We don't necessarily like to use Seattle as an example, but Seattle has some increased complex thresholds. I think it depends on what neighborhood you're in. But the trend is definitely going towards increasing that threshold.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'll just jump in. First of all, kudos for taking this thing on, because I've been deep in SEPA stuff on another thing, and this is indeed an incredibly complex matter. My gut is that there probably is some justification to looking at a conditional kind of situation, like you just discussed that Seattle is doing in this area versus this area, and how we want to be handling the incentivization or disincentivization of housing construction. So I guess all to say that it doesn't seem, in my mind, as I've been thinking through this for a couple of weeks now, it doesn't seem to be a black and white, we can just sort of, smear the whole city with this one standard and it works. So I think there are a lot of areas where there are mitigating circumstances, and I think at its core, SEPA is probably a good thing. But as most good things tend to do, they become overly complex and overly challenging in a lot of cases. So I'm glad I'm not in your shoes on this, because this is a big lift. But yeah, my gut is that it's probably not just a black and white lift the limit or not lift the limit. It's lift the limit where and how much and that sort of thing.
Are there any other commission comments or concerns?
This is Tim. I've had to do a couple SEPAs on projects, and in both cases, it created a lot of extra work and expense for no value added from my perspective. In one case, some documents said there was a river flowing through our property, and the documents were bad, so we had to prove that they were wrong. This is a mile and a half east of downtown. And then in the other one, we had to go to extraordinary lengths about noise mitigation on a road that had a lot less traffic than Division. So anyway, I'm for loosening things up a little bit on that. I think we kind of gone a little overboard with SEPA requirements, and it's really meant for major, large projects. And so I think this is a step in the right direction, is to relax some of the requirements.
Can I ask, this is Terrell, can I ask, is there one of the options that you prefer? Would that be the maximum, or
I would
just
go
for
for the maximum
residential?
based on I'd have to look it over a little more closely, Terrell, but I
Okay.
would think more flexibility and the max is how I'd start out.
Thank you.
Yes, SEPA dates back to the 70s, and since the 70s, the city has adopted, and the state's required cities to adopt all kinds of various regulations, environmental and other. And so, rarely does SEPA have additional requirements come to a project, especially on a smaller scale, but that does occur sometimes. But we do have a lot more regulation now that covers a lot of the subject area that SEPA includes as a part of its review adopted. So,
Terrell, you had asked what sort of option we prefer, and just looking at this, I'm looking at the housing issue, and so I tend to think that option 2, relaxing some of the rules around how we can provide additional housing without necessarily encouraging the more commercial uses. So I tend to go with the option 2 instead of the others.
Thank you, Commissioner Francis. Does any other commissioner have a preference for which option? We tried to give you guys a range in your packet rather than narrowing it down for you, so I'd love to hear your feedback.
Greg,
I'd agree with Greg on that with option 2.
Hi, this is Carol. Thank you for your comments. I don't have any feedback for you today.
So I don't disagree with Greg and Jesse on option 2. The 12,000 square feet catches my eye, though it seems pretty small. But I could be 30,000 seems more appropriate to me. I don't mind the parking piece of option 2, but anyone have a comment or idea there?
Yeah, I guess I wasn't reading that necessarily correctly. I was only focusing on the impact to single and multifamily with option 2. I guess I would then amend my response to option 3. I still think the land disturbance question is a big one. I think that can have potential significant environmental impacts with runoff and unearthing some, tar pit that somebody forgot about 50 years ago or something. But yeah, I agree on the commercial buildings piece.
And I guess I would say it would be option 2 and maybe lift the, if anything, lift the square footage on the commercial up a bit. I mean, 12,000 is fairly small, but like you said, the 40 to 90 parking spaces, that's, maybe not go the full option 3 there, but the option 2. And I don't know. And that would be something we could potentially just amend during the hearing, right? When we get there where, let's change the office commercial one from 12,000 to 24,000 or whatever. If we
Am I
adopt
reading that right? It's an and? That I don't really like that they're together.
Commissioner Francis, President Bayreuther, Commissioner Bank. I think there's some room for you to determine what makes the most sense as far as language that you find acceptable. So if that means that we tweak the parking that is a part of the and in regard to the non-residential uses, that's something that we can try and draft up and have you look over. If there's something in particular you want to send over to us. We just tried to pick, I guess, the simplest, if you will, options to put forward, either doing the maximum or looking at the residential only. But I certainly think there's a wider range of options that we could look at if that's what you're interested in.
Is that how it's written in the WAC? That's why they are coupled together in the WAC?
Yes.
Yes.
Interesting.
I can double check with James Richmond on that in regard to the way it's worded in the WAC, but it does allow for cities to adopt their own flexible threshold. So I think that there might be some room for us to tweak that a bit. But I can certainly look into that and follow up.
So I guess just clarify, my Boolean logic is a little foggy at 5 o'clock on Wednesdays, apparently. So in the downtown zone where no parking is required, if I did a building that was 45,000 square feet, as long as I didn't exceed 1,000 cubic yards of excavation, if we adopted option 1, and a 45,000 square foot project, would I be required to do SEPA?
Commissioner Francis, you would, because you're over that 30,000 square foot threshold. So if you're at 45,000 square feet for your building, you would still have to do SEPA. If you're
30,000 square feet and 90 parking spaces.
I think it's sort of looking at it. So if you did, let's say you did 45,000 square feet and only 40 parking spaces, since you're over the 30,000 square foot threshold, I think the way that the WAC is interpreted is you're over the threshold. I'll double check on that.
Because to me, that would be an or.
That was my question, yeah.
Right, I see what you're saying. I'll double check on that. I do think it's an and situation. They typically tend to be pretty restrictive. So like some of the cases that Tate looked at in our SEPA registry, they were under the threshold for the number of units, but they were over threshold on the amount of excavation they did. And so they got kicked back into doing SEPA review. So I think that's kind of the rule with the WAC is if you are under on one, but over on another, you're still going to get kicked back in.
Yeah, Jim Richmond here. The WAC does say and, so I think that you're limited on both those to the max. So if you went over 30,000 square feet, you take yourself out of the exemption, no matter how big your parking lot was or how small it was.
Oh, so really, it's to qualify for the exemption, you'd have to be under 30,000 square feet and under 90 parking.
Or
so this is not for triggering the SEPA review. This is for allowing an exemption.
Qualifying for the exemption. Yes.
Okay, you're right. Yeah.
Okay, so it's basically inverted. So that makes sense.
Greg and I are both twisted up on that. I get it now.
Yeah, see, SEPA is about as clear as mud.
So it's really about qualifying for an exemption, not triggering SEPA.
Correct. Yes, that is a very nice and succinct way to put it. Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, anything else, or everyone comfortable moving to hearing? Is that the question?
So this one is not ready to move to hearing. We do have to do that 60-day notification and comment period, and we're still trying to work through all of it. Also, if commission has a particular set of language that we want to look at, if that's adjusting the number of units or the cubic yards, that's kind of the direction I'm looking for right now. And then once we've nailed that down and we've gotten through the 60-day notification and comment period, then it will be ready for hearing.
Okay, about 3.
You said 3?
Yep.
See, I say 2 with 24,000 square feet.
We can always continue to move them forward in the draft with the two options.
So I do have a question. You know, you're doing the public comment review. How much work are you doing with the tribes on this? Because I know that's a big concern here. And is SEPA independent of the archaeological requirements?
So we wanted to be able to talk to the tribes about a more finalized draft. So we didn't want to take 4 or 5 options to them and kind of confuse them as to what we're trying to do. So I think we really wanted to nail down the details a little bit more and then reach out to Spokane Tribe, Colville, Kalispell. So that would be in addition to any comments we would receive from them during that 60-day comment period.
We're leaving open the possibility that we may end up having to adopt some other specific requirements, maybe outside of SEPA, to satisfy their needs for, you know, discovery on concerned sites, that sort of thing. We're still exploring that.
Right. And so it's not necessarily included in this piece of code, but we're definitely trying to explore with the Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation best practices or even model code in regard to that side of protecting cultural resources and historic sites. So that could be as simple as a process improvement where our current planners during the pre-development meeting, they would utilize DAHP's Wizard, which is their GIS layers as far as it uses a predictive model about how likely you are to resources.
We're trying to figure out a way to adopt a code provision that may be just, you know, singularly focused rather than hitting somebody with a whole ball of wax.
So, well, and as far as tribal response, even excluding the whole SEPA issue, any application that comes forward does go to the tribe for, right? Isn't it about archaeological concerns?
Right. So
project sites?
if you're subject to the SEPA review, they would be one of those agencies that we would ask for comment back from. And for several of the mitigated determination of significance that we have issued over the last several years, their comments back to us generally ask for an inadvertent discovery plan to be on file on site.
But aren't they notified on standard applications? It's only on SEPA applications?
They're notified in land use applications, but on a building, if it's a building permit,
Right.
a type 1, and they would be SEPA exempt, they would not be notified.
Okay.
One of the things we're required to do if we increase our exemptions is to adopt regulations or show that we already have adopted regulations that provide adequate protection for cultural and historic resources. So we need to show that those protections are in place, or we need to adopt them at the same time we raise our thresholds. And so that, I think that would address the concern you're talking about, Greg.
Okay, that's good.
Well, if there wasn't any further discussion, I promise there's only 2 slides left and we can rush through them.
Perfect.
Yeah, keep moving.
Right,
This horse is starting to flounder.
I know, I'm trying. We are trying to move these forward as much as we can. As Nate mentioned, we do have a project webpage that's live now. It acts as the clearinghouse for all information about each of the code amendments. In addition to the in-person events we did in December, Nate and I had a great presentation with Community Assembly last week on January 6th. And then we will be coming back to you guys on January 26th to talk about those new residential development sections of code again. And then we are reaching out as much as we can to agencies, tribes, and then other, say, neighborhood councils to just solicit comment back. Please refer people to the website if they want to reach out and send us comments. We'd love to hear them. So, sorry, it was really dry topics tonight, guys, but thank you for getting to the end of things.
No one could say short plats are dry. No.
Certainly not SEPA.
Yeah, SEPA? No.
Well, thank you. Well done. Okay, so that's the end of our agenda. So real quick, does anyone want to make an individual comment on the legislation we talked about earlier? We're not taking any action, but this would be an opportunity to give an opinion to the commission and hopefully to the council, since it's going to move quickly. Greg?
Well, I'm not going to give an opinion to the council, but I would certainly encourage people to read the potential legislation. And if you feel strongly one way or the other about it, or a change, get it into the legislatures and legislators. And it's in both houses right now on 2 separate bills. So now is the opportunity to comment and make potential notifications for change. So, but I'm not going to suggest one way or another. I have my own opinions, but that's it.
Okay.
I guess I'll jump into I have my own opinions, obviously, but I think it's a little early to see where this is all going to land. I think the language that's at least in the House bill that I reviewed this afternoon is quite aggressive. I was surprised. I don't know that I disagree with all of it. I think the big challenge that I'm having is this question of local control versus state control. And I think I'm going to be very interested to watch this go through and see what the implementation of it actually looks like. If it's something akin to what was done in Oregon, where they go to the municipalities and say, show us by X date how you plan to comply with this new state statute versus forcing a model code upon us. I think it's going to be one of those devils in the details things. But, obviously a lot of it is in line with a lot of the stuff that we've been working on. And my hope is that it continues to underline the importance for immediate and prompt local action. So I'm hopeful. I'm feeling better with the cover that it's going on at the state level, but I think we'll be interested to see what happens as it moves through committee.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I want to give my individual opinion. I hope the city, hope the commission, I hope the council, and I hope the government affairs team do support the concept. If you're aware of the context, the AWC seems to be opposed. From what my understanding is, I reached out to Councilmember Wilkinson and would invite her if she wants to address the commission. She's the director and the representative for District 9. To help us better understand, because my understanding is their obvious objection obvious to the AWC is their preemption of local control, right? My response to that is, well, then let's take local control. That's what we've been talking about for a year or two, right? But I'd be disappointed if the council then opposed it on those grounds. I think the AWC arguments that I read were weak, that they don't increase affordability, you know, so or improve affordability and so forth. I think that's a completely different topic. I disagree with that context, but I think it's a different topic than what's proposed in these bills of creating opportunity of land use and then starting to, you know, inform development standards and so forth, how that should be approached. So anyway, that's my take on it. I think the support to commerce would be valuable to help other cities, unlike Spokane, that do have resources to take these issues on. I think that's important to create a blanket approach. So that's my take. But it may not, you know, come to us. So, but we've been talking about it a long time, so we're prepared if we get asked. Okay. Anyone else? Sounds good. I think we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks all.
Good night, everyone.